Welcome back to another episode of the Quarantine Diaries. Once again, I'm Jared Vernon here. Once again, day 28. And I'm going to be honest with you folks. I feel like I've held up pretty well for being locked in a building for a full month, but I'm starting to break down a little bit. No pun intended, but something smells awful fishy around here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. Could be some sort of plumbing or septic problem. I have no idea. There's an incredibly awful smell in here, and I don't know how much more I can stand to this. It's kind of ridiculous. Let's hear our verse of the week. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority and not as the teachers of the law. So we're continuing to talk about foundations today, and whatever the awful stench in this building is, it reminds me of something that Paul talks about. It smells like something died in here, and I can't figure it out. Still trying to get to the bottom of it, but Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, "But thanks be to God who always leads us in triumphal procession in Christ, and through us spreads everywhere the fragrance of the knowledge of him. For we are to God the aroma of Christ among those who are being saved and those who are perishing. To the one we are the smell of death, to the other the smell of life. And who is equal to such a task?" What Paul's talking about here when he mentions this triumphal procession, remember, with the armor of God and with a lot of things that the people that are hearing these, the Jewish Christians in this day, are thinking of Roman things, and they're in a Roman world. They're thinking of this in Roman terms through the lens that they see the world. And when they talk about the triumphal procession, what the Romans would do after they won a battle would they lead the losing army through the city, and they would burn a special kind of incense that was reserved for that day. And when you smelled that, if you were on the Roman side, if you were the victor, it was the smell of victory. It was the smell of life. You won. The battle has been won. You celebrate that. But if you're on the losing side, if you're being led in that procession and you're the loser, it's the smell of death. You've been defeated, and it's a stench that would remind you of something awful and be associated with that. And that's what Paul is talking about. Similar to the salt and the light of the world, salt of the earth, we are the aroma of Christ. And so we are spreading his knowledge and the fragrance of him everywhere that we go. And so I want to encourage you today, how do you smell? I've been in this building for 28 days, and honestly, maybe it's me, but more so than our physical smell, we're the aroma of Christ, and we're spreading this smell of victory and life and salvation to those that we're coming in contact with. And so another foundational thing would be being the aroma of Christ, and that's something similar also to what Peter says, always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have. This is something that we're always ready for. We smell good to the world, and they're like, wow, there's something about you that's different. So I encourage you to think about those things today. So I think I finally figured out a plan to get to the bottom of what this smell is, and it might seem a little bit unorthodox, but I think it's going to work.
Hey,